Every year I look forward to my cooking, baking ritual that includes making at least 3 different types of traditional German Christmas cookies. All the while I'm listening to some cheesy Christmas music, which is my husband's favorite. I'm so excited to share in this video my favorite cookies. Because it can be a little bit hard to come by and it is so easy to make my own, I always start by making some vanilla sugar. And I know that this is a little bit more unusual here in the United States. In Germany, it's actually something you can easily buy in the store. However, a lot of the vanilla sugar is actually called vanillin sugar, which means it's a synthetic vanilla flavoring, and I like to make my own with real vanilla and powdered sugar that I add to a jar, and then I simply add some powdered sugar. And typically I like to do this a little bit ahead of the holiday season so that the sugar can really season and sit and steep and develop its full flavor. And this time around I was a little late to the game, but that's just how life sometimes is. And I added a little bit more vanilla bean paste than sugar because I really wanted the vanilla flavor here. And then it sets me up for a good baking session. My first cookie recipe here is called Spitzboom or Linzer Kekse, which is a traditional German cookie that is so pretty and looks so nice on every cookie plate. And for that one, I'm just mixing sugar and butter in a bowl, but sometimes, as you can see, I have these little mishaps where I'm adding a little bit too much sugar, and then I just put it back because when it's dry, there is no harm in it. To that, I'm adding an egg, and then I'm gonna just mix up the dough. And today, things really don't want to work the way I thought they would. And so here I'm using my handheld mixer, which gives me a little bit more control over the whole process than using my KitchenAid stand mixer that you can see in the background, because then I constantly have to scrape down the sides of the bowl. And with this one, I have a little bit more feel and control for the dough. And also oftentimes my big mixer is great for bread recipes and bread doughs, but for a smaller cookie dough recipe, my handheld mixer is just the perfect way to go. I'm adding flour, and this year I have been experimenting with using spelt flour instead of wheat flour. Wheat is often hybridized, and even if you get organic wheat, it can be a little bit harder to digest. And spelt is an ancient grain. It's considered an ancient grain, even though it has most of the properties and the gluten content and the taste profile that is very close to wheat, so it's an easy substitute. Next, I'm adding my almond meal. And by the way, the full recipe is down in the description box, the link to the printable recipe that you can make these cookies at home. You don't have to take any notes here while you're watching this video. Almond meal is really easy to find at Trader Joe's. If you don't have a Trader Joe's and you can't find it in stores, it's really simple to make your own. You simply use some raw almonds, you add them to a bowl, add some boiling water to it, let them stand for 10 minutes, drain the water, and you will find that the skin will slip right off. It's actually pretty fun. Then you let your almonds dry, and next you just put them in your food processor, and then you have your almond meal. I didn't have to do that this time, and here's my cookie dough, which is pretty stiff, but that's exactly how I wanted it. But it needs to chill, and for that I'm using some saran wrap, some plastic wrap, and adding the cookie dough so I can easily transfer it to my refrigerator. And I like to press it a little bit into a disc shape, because then I find that it chills quicker, because otherwise, the inside of the dough takes a little while before it's all chilled, and the outside is chilled, and then vice versa. It has pretty uniform temperature. So here I'm pressing it into a disc shape. It doesn't have to be pretty or anything. It just has to be functional, so I can put it in my refrigerator for about half an hour or an hour, but this is never a hard and fast rule. I have Another cookie recipe, which I had another fail. This was not really my day, I guess, even though I had a really cheerful baking session with some Christmas music playing in the background that I cannot have the audio for in this video because otherwise I get a copyright claim, but you can probably just imagine. And while I was recording for these vanilla crescent cookies, how I made the dough, and it also has almond meal, I had a cat trip over the cord of my camera, and then it never really recorded the making. However, again, the link for the full recipe is in the description box, and there's really no secret to the dough. It's just adding the ingredients together, mixing up in a dough, and then you saw the logs that I placed in my refrigerator. Now, for the Linzer cookies, for the Spitzboom, they're really pretty. Just wait and see what they look like. I removed the dough disc from my refrigerator and floured my work surface so that I can roll out the dough. And I'm also flouring my wooden rolling pin that I've had for so many years. And I love using my quartz countertops because it actually keeps the dough cool. If you don't have a quartz countertop, don't worry about it. Wood or whatever surface you have will just be fine, but it always helps a little bit. And I realized that I rolled in the first go my dough a little bit too thick, but that's okay because then my cookies are a little bit more substantial. And I'm really these days coming away from perfection and beating myself up over things that didn't go the way I wanted them, because ultimately it's about the process, enjoying the process, and making something for loved ones and for family, and letting go of this idea of perfection, because who says that these cookies wouldn't be good? I know that they're a little bit more substantial because the dough is a little bit thicker, but you'll see in a moment what I mean when I have the finished cookie there. Then I'm placing those cookie rounds on my prepared cookie sheet. I have a silicone baking mat on there that always makes it easier to remove the cookies afterwards and helps with the cleanup. And this time I had these bigger round cutouts, and so this is the first, and then I have some hearts. So they go in the oven and bake. And for the top part, and again you'll see in a little bit what the finished product looks like, I need something with a hole in the middle. Therefore, I use the same bigger round, and then I have a smaller round cookie cutter that I cut out the hole. I guess you could probably find a small glass, or if you really wanted to, you could probably just use your hand and freeform it. And luckily, I had a big heart and a small heart. I was hoping I had some star cookie cutouts, but I didn't. So I only went with the hearts and the circles, but you already get the drift here, what's happening. And it's really easy to just remove the inside of it. Now the bottom pieces come out, and then the top pieces go in the oven, and then I'll show you how I assemble the whole cookie. It's really important to remove the cookies from the cookie tray pretty quick, because otherwise they keep on baking, because those cookie sheets retain the heat, and you really want to be pretty accurate with how long you're baking them. Now I'm assembling the cookies here. I have the bottom pieces on a plate, and I have some red currant jam. You can use raspberry jam, you could use orange jam, you could really just use any jam. Ideally, you want a jelly and not a jam, but again, anything that works. And I like anything red because I love the contrast of the color. I'm just adding a little bit of a dollop, and I could have warmed up my jelly here to make the jelly come off my spoon a little easier. Also, I didn't want to use my fingers to move it off my spoon, because then I have the jam on my fingers and I'm touching the cookies, and you get the drift. So sometimes that's just how the process goes. And again, you can see here how I'm struggling with getting the jelly off of my spoon and just about the right amount. But ideally you want to add a little bit more than the cutout on top, because you want the top part to stick, to be glued, if you will, to the bottom part. And for the final presentation, I'm sprinkling it with a good dusting of powdered sugar because that just makes it look so pretty and the contrast is so nice and it just adds another layer of sweetness. But who doesn't like a little bit extra powdered sugar? And here they are, my perfect Linzer cookies or Spitzboom that look so pretty on any cookie plate. Now for my next cookies, Vanille Kippffell. I also call them vanilla crescent cookies. They're probably one of my favorite Christmas cookies because first of all, they're really easy to make. They don't take a lot of time to make them and everybody loves them. They're full of vanilla flavor, and these are the ones that I really needed the vanilla sugar for because the vanilla sugar also goes into the dough. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to show you that because of my technology fail, if you will, but trust me on that one. And again, the link to the recipe is in the description box. I had these 2 dough logs and now I'm cutting smaller pieces, pretty even in size, off of those dough logs. And then I'm going to roll them into shape. And there's really no secret to it. You can either just roll them into a smaller log and then form a crescent shape and then make the ends just a little bit more pointed than the middle and form a crescent, like a half moon shape. So here you can see it. I'm going to show you again. And really there's a little bit of practice. Again, practice makes perfect. And again, this is not about perfection. I personally like the vanilla crescents, the Vanille Kippffell, if they're a little bit thicker in the middle. And some people have them pretty long and thin, but then I find that they brown really easily when you bake them. And I like them to be done, but pale in the baking process. However, you can easily figure out what works best for you. For the dusting sugar, this is another reason I needed my vanilla sugar. I'm mixing powdered sugar with my vanilla sugar. And as I told you in the beginning of the video, this hasn't really steeped through, but it's good enough and it has these little black specks from the vanilla bean inside, and I love that absolutely. Here are the finished baked cookies. And now for the dusting part, I have my bowl back here. And while the cookies are still hot, this is really crucial because you want the vanilla sugar, the dusting sugar, to stick to the cookies. And yes, they are a little hot to the touch, so do the best you can. And you can see, again, this is my failed day, but sometimes it's just the way it is. And this is raw, this is authentic. This is how I roll at our Gabled home. I have a wire rack, and this really helps for the cookies to cool down. But you can also make a little bit more vanilla sugar if you need that. I find that you typically end up with a little bit more than you need, but that's better than not having enough. And again, I'm moving them around in the vanilla sugar, and then on to my next cookies here. That is something that was a little bit of an experiment. It's a cookie dough, and there's really nothing special to this cookie dough. That is my grandparents' recipe, and I wanted to use this embossed rolling pin that has a really pretty design. Now, in hindsight, I know that I would have liked to make some more adjustments to the cookie dough, but one of the challenges with using German recipes in the US with the US ingredients is that some of the ingredients behave very slightly differently. For example, the sugar in Germany is made from sugar beets, and here it is cane sugar. So first of all, that behaves a little bit differently. And then often the flour, even though, yes, I am using spelt flour and that should be pretty similar, can be slightly different. So in hindsight, I should have used a little bit more flour for this cookie dough recipe here, but they still came out really nice. This is my second batch here, and I'm going to move them. They're still a little soft, which is fine because they will stiffen up once they cool down. So sometimes it fools you, and I didn't want them to be brown. The next day, when all the cookies are cool, I'm adding them to Christmas cookie tins, which makes everything so festive, and also it keeps your cookies crisp and melt in your mouth, and they don't go soft or develop any other flavors. Here are my little embossed cookies with a little design on the top. I'm going to show you in just a moment what they look like. And they also get their own cookie tin. I have parchment paper in between the layers to keep them all fresh. And these are the Linzer cookies, or the Spitzboom. Particularly they need parchment paper because otherwise the jam gets all over the other cookies and that wouldn't be so pretty, and it makes them just unnecessarily sticky. So let's move them here to the cookie tin. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Again, the recipes are in the description box below. I would love to hear from you in the comments if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video.